ladies and gentlemen. I hope that worked. I hope that was a smooth transition. Welcome back. This is Get the Mic. Hope you enjoyed that little intro. You know, starting soon. We worked hard on that as well. We got some other creators to pitch in. Pretty cool. Anyways, this is the show, Get the Mic, where your hosts on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brok.
we analyze fiction to discover the deeper meaning through a mythological context. And today, as usual, we're covering Dragon Ball. As you can see, there's a lot of changes. None of these buttons work. Eventually, we will stream on Twitch. I imagine that's kind of in the plans. I think Brock knows a little more about that.
Yeah, we're trying to get this set up so it's cross-platform, so we're getting our placeholders together so that it actually functions right, and we can advertise across and say, hey, you can find us here if you'd rather use that.
Yeah, so our last video did pretty well. We have videos now, so that's actually pretty helpful. But at any rate, I guess we'll get right into it.
Yeah.
Although I will say, before we continue, one little more housekeeping thing is we are going to start streaming twice a week. It'll probably just be Sunday and then one random day. So just be aware of that. That's probably coming in the near future. Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris Sombra.
Thank you.
Our oldest fan here.
Most reliable fan.
Chris Sombra. Anyways, our oldest fan. Thank you. Yeah, we worked hard on it. It looks a lot better than before, let's say.
Definitely.
Anyhow, yeah. So we're gonna start streaming more. Please tune in at those points. I think this week is gonna be Thursday.
Yeah. Plan is Thursday.
Is Thursday. We're gonna cover another episode. So, it'll actually progress us in the story. I feel like we're going at a snail's pace right now, so we'll get faster.
There's a few episodes to go over.
Anyhow, I guess we do need to go ahead and get started. This episode is called Danger from Above.
Yes.
Yes. So the first thing we see is they kind of recap what happens here in the preliminary round and Jackie Chun and Krillin's fight. Now, I like the way they go about framing this, because it is the matchups, it's the important parts of the fight, and their conclusions. Now, for this, it really emphasizes that attainment on that hierarchy. You can see the picture, or the colors, I guess, going up each one that wins. And those that lose obviously do not advance. And that's a representation of that climbing the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's a delineation that you can see that it's categorically one has something in common and is above the other, right?
Well, and I also briefly wanted to mention, last time we talked about Krillin and Master Roshi fighting, and this is a great example of like all that happens in that fight, right? It's just a perfect encapsulation of it. For a recap, and it's important because this context is going to be useful for this episode as well. We're going to be talking about that more, and then a little bit more in the next episode, because we went ahead and watched the next episode already.
I really like in the recaps here throughout this arc where it's recapping the specific things that are happening, the different moves that are happening in each fight, because they keep recurring and being used as a motif to mean something different, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of the early techniques in Dragon Ball do well, whereas some later stuff I don't think does very well. But, right, and I think I just wanted to show this to really solidify, because we talked about the hierarchy, the basis of the hierarchy being this Krillin overcoming his disgust, Yamcha failing to overcome Master Roshi, Ran fans with feminine wiles unable to stop the heroic Nam, let's say, and Goku beating the monster of monsters. So it really encapsulates that, but it also includes this part with Krillin, which I thought was good. But
right, because, well, and we're going to see in this episode the learning during the fight, and we're seeing that shown in the recap with Krillin, right? because that was sort of being set up then in that fight. That Krillin was learning the techniques that Roshi was using against him and then turning them back against him.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
He was trying new things as well. Especially poignant with the panties, I would say.
Definitely.
It's that small incorporation of the shadow that Krillin is trying to achieve.
Right, and that's very difficult for Krillin from that fight, right? So we're gonna see how it's different for Goku in this episode from Krillin. How easy it is for Goku as opposed to Krillin.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so we see the matchup is going to be Nam, who we have here, and Goku. And we get a little bit of Nam's backstory here. Nam is trying to fight for his village, to get water for his village. And he is, let's say, a being of order, I would say. He's
Hmm.
he's heroic in his manner as well. He's a really good match for Goku here.
Right, this is a good example of how true someone's aim is. His aim is extremely true.
Well,
He's operating above his self.
and I think we may actually see this later in a later episode, but I think he could ride the Nimbus, right?
I don't remember, but that'll be interesting to see.
Right. Well, he is definitely following a way, maybe not the way, but a way, and we'll see how that he matches up with Goku. And his attack here, the name of it is like danger from above, or an attack from heaven, I think is the
Hmm.
better translation from it.
Attack from
And
the
it's
heavens.
exactly
Yeah.
because he has incorporated some of that divine way, that he's able to use that in his fighting techniques, and that's why
Hmm.
all these techniques are symbolic. But we do see his backstory here. He's trying to get that water, and that's why he's trying to win. He has a holy goal, let's say, and he's
Yeah.
self-sacrificial. We've
I was
already
about to
seen
point that
that.
out. The self-sacrifice motif coming in here, and really it's hard to pit something up against the self-sacrifice and say what is more morally noble, Self-sacrifice is really high on that hierarchy.
Right, exactly. And that's why this is the next level of those hierarchies. And you have Krillin failing to overcome his, which is
Hmm.
fine. I mean,
Well, that's
he
part of
does.
Krillin.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought he flew on the Nimbus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly my point. This is someone who is he's heroic like Goku in a way. He's and we're gonna see what he lacks though
Hmm.
soon enough.
Yeah.
I think
it's
I
pretty
think we'll
clear.
just leave it for that for now. So Goku, it has met. This is more of a match than the monster beast, let's say.
Definitely. He is someone who can challenge Goku in a substantive way.
Right, because what is it? That self-sacrifice, the ennobling action of a hero, is that really subordinate to the logos?
Well, you're talking about the ego and the shadow, and we had talked about what Krillin's lacking. Goku has a lot of that, and so he's not so tied into a self not to sacrifice, right? Like Goku operates in a self-sacrificing manner just by nature, right? Because he's more tied into his true self, like the archetype of the self. And so it is something that he needs to grapple with and understand, right? That as a part of himself. And that's a lot of what's going on in these fights too, is it's sort of like you hit your limit, right? You learn your own rules, how you operate by hitting the limits of, how people operate. And this is that limit of that self-sacrificing.
Well, actually, I think there's an even a more poignant part at the end of this, but I'm just trying
Mhm.
not to give too much away.
Yeah.
And I think I just need to kind of move on. I don't want to give too much away. So
Yeah.
let's move on. So the first thing that happens in the fight is Goku decides to do the after image technique.
Yes. The first thing that he does, which is pretty much the last thing that he saw, right?
Yeah.
The thing that Krillin was not able to
Especially
do,
that. Yeah, especially that. The thing that Krillin was not able to do.
and a representation of that, I guess I would say, is it detaching yourself from your self-image, right? And so kind of having a mastery of your image and being able to step outside of it and to use it.
Well, yeah, being able to project it. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Exactly.
Because Goku knows himself outside of just an ego, right? He's more rooted in something. I mean, obviously he's got his tail right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big part of why he suddenly gets so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's the tail growing back is sort of a natural necessity, right? And so we see now that for Goku to continue up the hierarchy, he needs it. Absolutely.
Well, right, and the way he uses it in this fight. I mean, even just now, grabbing Nam and saving himself from getting thrown out of the ring.
Hmm.
It's relying on that ancestral shadow.
Yeah, and this is something that it's not just a biological ancestral shadow, right? It's sort of having yourself be integrated with it, and it's almost like having the door open to your own potential havoc. You know, you're not limiting yourself. You're
Well,
not thinking, like basically trying to frame your own actions within a preconditioned sort of image, right? Instead, Goku goes beyond that and he's tied into a bigger idea than that. And so he's able to learn.
can you say that more succinctly?
Because Goku is respectful of the spirit that his tail represents, which is the ability for us to learn and to adjust and adapt and do what's necessary to be able to protect ourselves and tap into our own potential that we don't really frame part of our ego, right? And that's what the shadow is. And so Krillin's really not able to do that. He's really focused on it's almost like he's in his head, right? And that's why he wasn't able to get up to this level. But Goku, and this being a result of him coming up against the monster of monsters, right? Because it was necessary for him to be adaptive to win that fight.
Well, okay, interesting, interesting. See, I was more thinking that I don't know if I said this in that episode 2 episodes ago, but I was more thinking that when he grows his tail back, that's an acknowledgement that you have to Goku has to unsheath his sword, let's say, in order to fight a monster, right? He has to become a monster
Well, it's almost like
to
going
fight a
outside
monster.
of hypothetical play, right? You're stepping into a different sort of stakes whenever you
But
let that part of
also,
yourself be
you
present.
also don't and the tail is the shadow, but it's
It's not
more
it's not
it's
necessarily
more than
the
that.
shadow,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's right, exactly. It's more
But
than
it's his
that. It's
link to it, right? It's his
mhm.
acknowledgement of it, his integration of it for the sake of, and that's the thing that we see, leading forward into this fight or into the next fight even is the thing. That flexibility is one of, we haven't talked about it, but one of the most operant things about Goku and how Saiyans are is that flexibility, the ability to, you know, the fool precedes the hero to lose out and learn and always be in the process of getting better, right?
Right, and that's the real like don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but that kind of leads into the Zenkai boost, but
Hmm.
we'll get into that later.
Well, I mean, I think it's good to point it
But
out here
even
because
still,
that's
before that is even an explanation, the method by which Goku operates with truth, like and that's the thing. He is embodying that confronting chaos with truth better than anyone else.
hmm
He's confronted with chaos, techniques he doesn't know. What does he do, right? He confronts them truthfully. I don't know this, but let me try and learn it.
hmm and he is willing to lose to it, right? He doesn't shy away from it. He doesn't try to get around it by being manipulative or anything. He fights head on and is
And
willing to proceed the hero in
that's
that way.
how he embodies the logos.
Right. It's a constructive
It's the
process.
confrontation of chaos, creating order from that, right?
Hmm.
And some people in the community leverage criticism at Goku for stealing people's techniques.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of like saying the Big Lebowski's not funny because he repeats lines. It's like that's not the point.
Right, and it isn't the point that he steals them, it's the point that
Integrates them.
yeah, he is integration.
He is the process. He's a constructing process. He is a participatory understanding.
And so he easily fends off Nam, and they pretty much fight to a stalemate at this point in the fight. Anything else you want to say about this early
Well,
stage?
I want to say right here, Nam is tripped up by the tail, literally tripped by the tail as he rushes to go try to force Goku out of the ring. So that being essentially, he's basically he just wants to be able to secure this win because he's not doing it for himself. He's not doing it to exhibit his prowess, right? And so his initial attack here is I just need to get to him and push him out of the ring. But Goku's tail is what trips him up when he tries to do that.
Right. See, I was more, let's say, oh man, let me try to think about what I'm gonna say before I say it. Um, so what do you think that the mode of being that Nam represents, being tripped up by the tail? What does that mean?
I think that it's to say that Nam is too desperate to get the win for something outside of himself and he is not ready to contend with Goku's mode of being, which is more for the sake of betterment and not for the sake of a gain for someone outside of yourself.
See, I was thinking more because Nam is, let's say, he practices lots of abstinence, right? He is, and he doesn't like eat meat. He doesn't,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Oh yeah, I was definitely wanting to get to that as we get into this too,
right.
because
His mode of being, with as self disciplined as he is so horrified by the prospect of Goku, what Goku could be, right? That's what I think trips him
well,
up.
he's almost you could consider him to be someone who's slightly afraid of their own shadow, right? He's very in control. He's
It's also an
very
unconscious thing of Goku, and it's almost like an unconscious showing of like,
hmm
this is what I can do, right?
yeah. And
If
that's the
that
thing
makes
about
sense.
his mode of being where he's so self-sacrificing. Self-sacrificing is a control, right? It's a domination of the self by I don't want to just say the ego, but your ego construct self takes control and denies your unconscious self its desires, right? Hunger, pleasure, greed, whatever your selfish desires are, it denies it. And I think what we're seeing here, him getting tripped up, is that he's actually kind of a tyrant to himself.
Right, exactly. It's too much order, right?
Hmm.
It's too much of that.
I think that's a more succinct way of putting it.
Yeah. So say it succinctly.
I did.
All right. So yeah, I think that covers that. Like, I the only other thing I wanted to mention was Goku's use. I don't think did we talked about Goku's use of the after image. Did we
Hmm.
talk about? We didn't talk about Roshi's reaction to it though.
Roshi's shocked.
Roshi is shocked.
He is. He says that he's surprised that Namu was able to see through it because Namu counters it. Right. It doesn't defeat Namu when he does it. So Roshi is surprised on two
Well, what
levels.
does Namu do? The very first thing he does is close his eyes. He admits the truth
Hmm.
that he's not able to see where Goku is
Right.
because of what we were talking about earlier, the projection that Goku makes. But I think I just wanted to cover that real quick. But yeah,
Yeah, that's a
Roshi's
good
shocked.
distinction.
And so then I think this is yeah. So then we have Goku spin around really fast. And it seems like a silly gag, and Nom's like about to lose here.
Hmm.
What could this be about?
So this is pretty funny. Um, the first aspect of it is that he is responding to Namu trying to force him out of the ring by trying then to force Namu out of the ring that he can think of, right? So this is another aspect of Goku integrating the technique that somebody used and trying to process it into something more cohesive, right? So Goku has this great idea that he's going to spin at him so that he can't even come into contact with him without being struck, and so it just forces him where he wants him to go.
So why does it fail?
I think that Goku is by spinning. See, I'm not positive. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think there might be something to say about the fact that Goku is he thinks that he can just use his body in a way that is not consistent with his perception and makes himself dizzy. And what I mean by that is he is changing his perspective rapidly so fast that it disorients him, and his body is getting ahead of his mind. So
Right. Okay.
he's
You're in the same
disoriented.
vein now of what I was
Yeah,
thinking because
he's
I
not
was
using
also
enough
going to
of his
say,
ego self, I should say.
well, I
Right?
was also going to say he is spinning around, right? He's not aimless,
Yes.
but he is it's almost an inward focus like what you were saying.
Yeah,
It's
he's
hard to
showing
pin
how
down,
true his
but
aim
yeah.
is, right? But the problem is that if you could say if he closed his eyes, if he could close his eyes the way that Namu willfully closes his eyes in fights, then he wouldn't be so dizzy. But Goku, with his eyes wide open all the time, actually needs to show more self-preservation.
Oh no, I think I know exactly what it is. So yeah, it is Goku trying to perceive too much at once.
Hmm.
He's spinning around, and when you see, I just saw that on the screen. The videos are amazing because they definitely help us stay on track. When Goku's spinning, it looks like he has eyes everywhere,
Yeah,
and
eyes around
while
his head.
Goku's
Yeah,
pretty strong, like he can't keep that up forever.
right.
No one can.
Well, no one
That's
is Marduk, right?
Well, even Marduk, right?
Yeah,
Even Marduk has to be tested as a good Marduk.
right. Even though Marduk has eyes around his head, it's not self-sufficient on its own, right? It has to be steered and it has to be controlled.
And so unsteered and uncontrolled, Goku can't keep it up long enough to get the win. And he passes out.
He passes
He
out. He
goes
goes
unconscious
unconscious.
because he's perceived too much.
He overloads himself.
Yeah.
Does not preserve
Yes,
his
yes.
perception.
And so Namu takes this chance and he decides to do his attack from heaven. So we've already established that Nam is a heroic character. He's, let's say, not above like Roshi or anything, but he is definitely a heavenly, like divine, and
Hmm.
he's even in his garb and his, I don't even know what to call it, the Buddhas behind him, all that.
Right.
Um, but yeah, he's definitely in that vein. He's self-sacrificing, and so his ultimate attack is what?
Attack from the heavens.
A strike, a strike of divine being. Right here
Hmm.
is all of my being in one
Cross.
cross. I was
Hmm.
about to say that, yeah, because
Yes.
right, because that is the center
Yeah.
of being. That is the center of suffering.
Yeah. You can literally think of this as a cross falling out of the sky onto someone.
Yes,
And
and
this
has
is
Namu suffered for that? Yes.
absolutely.
It's and that's the thing. That's why it matches his mode of being so well. And I do really like how
Well, it's like this. Imagine he's saying, bear the burden of my cross, right? Bear the weight of my mode of
of my
being.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of my
exactly.
people,
Of
it is,
everything,
bear
right.
the cross I have to bear.
And and I think that's an excellent thing to say because what does Goku say? Okay.
Okay.
He lifts it up.
He opens his eyes and then he takes it.
Yeah, he lifts up, and that's another reason, another maybe criticism that could be levied is like Goku lets himself get hit by a lot of things.
Hmm.
But it's to show that his spirit can withstand it, I suppose.
Well,
Is the
it's
best way to
also
say?
participatory, right? He needs to take it so that he can take it on and become stronger.
Right, exactly. And so here, he takes all of that, and he says that I'm the Logos. I'm the only one that can carry your load as well as everyone
Hmm.
else's load.
This is my function.
Right.
And so yeah, he takes it on, and Namu says, anyone hit by this attack will not get up for 10 days.
Yes. We passed over that because we were at that point. But right.
But yeah, the 10 days obviously being a reflection of the 10 seconds. So it's sort of like saying, this isn't a 10-second attack. This is a higher level of attack. Almost like a second tier of the hierarchy from you attack. A strike from the heavens, right?
And so what does Nam say when it fails?
What exactly does he say? I don't
He says,
remember.
I must have missed. I
Oh
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
try again.
Must have missed
It's
the mark, right?
impossible that I didn't succeed.
Mm-hmm. He
So what does he do? He doesn't face his obstacle with truth, and that is why he loses this
Right.
fight.
Well, the whole reason that he did it in the first place was that he couldn't get close enough to Goku without getting tripped up by the tail, and he says it to himself. So
Yes.
he says, "I have to do it this way because I can't ring out him. So I just have to essentially,
Oh, and look at that little sparkle that goes up there
yeah."
too, right? He is a divine light. He's a shining star coming down.
Which anybody who's in the hierarchy and not Goku is defeated by this attack, right? Just conceptually, this is
Definitely.
the only reason that Goku can take this attack. This attack is because of what he represents. So
And
it's
well, what we see, I guess we kind of got ahead of ourselves, but what we see is then Goku jumps up to follow Namu into the heavens.
right. He stands up, and Namu, of course, says to himself, "Well, then it can't be that I was wrong about Goku. It has to be that I missed the mark, right? I
Well,
didn't hit the center of Goku's being with it, sort of.
well, he doesn't address the truth that Goku can withstand that attack.
Yeah, that Goku could withstand.
He can lift the suffering of
Hmm.
him and his people. And actually, it's really funny that Chris Somber has already talked about this episode in the chat, but that's actually literally what he does. Like the next thing after the tournament.
Yep, that
So
is literally the
not
next
only
thing.
does he do it in this, and it's symbolically foretold in this episode, but he just does it the next couple of
Right, and
episodes
so he's
at the end of
symbolically
the
acting
arc.
it out right here whenever he jumps up after him,
Yeah,
which leads to a hilarious moment in the episode, right? As they
where they're
pass each
like
other in the air.
trying to fight in midair. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because
Oh, this
on his
part.
way
Yeah.
down, Goku passes him on the way up, and he's just like, I don't understand. Goku goes higher than him. They specifically point out that his jump was even higher than Namu's.
Yes.
And then Goku dives down and starts to sort of steer over to him, and I can't remember what he says to him in midair. He comments to him that he's a good fighter, but that's basically that Goku's won.
Yeah. And then he uses his own hubris to defeat him.
Right. He's already seen this attack once, and if you try the same attack on Goku twice, well, shame on you. Because this is the only thing that Goku consistently seems to do without fail throughout like the entire series. Like you don't beat him twice the same way. It just does not happen. So, of course,
Well, that's again, let's just say that's the ultimate adoption of the confrontation of chaos with truth and turning it into order, right?
hmm and I mean, and that's what he does. So he tracks exactly where he's going to land because he's predictable now, and just kicks him out of the ring.
Well, right, and this is also to say the heroic spirit is not enough if the only hierarchy being climbed has already been conquered,
hmm
because the self-discipline of Namu, right, and the self-sacrifice, they've both been conquered by Namu already. It doesn't seem he's going into the chaos to create order. He's here to get something right.
hmm
But we'll see, and I love how this episode ends. So we'll see what happens with that. But right, Goku kicks him out here, and that is the end of the quarterfinals, semifinals.
Into the semifinals.
Anything else you want to say before the match is over?
No, I think we hit the nail on the head on that one.
Perfect. So what happens next is everyone reacts to Goku winning, and Master Roshi is a little spooked because he thinks Goku might be able to beat him. Wonder why that is. Maybe it's because he's been lecherous for so long. But
Right. Well, you kind of think of it in terms of hierarchies, and you've got like Master Roshi's the oldest, wisest, strongest sort of father type figure, right? Not technically the oldest, but you know what I mean. And then he sees that Goku is able to take on a tier of suffering that you could say he has taken on at some point in his progression as a character, right? He's taken on the struggle of a society because he's above the societal father even. And so
right.
you can see him ascending these rungs in that level of responsibility, and he's like, "Well, I still don't
and
see
I
the end
think
of it."
and I think the thing is Roshi knows that he's so far advanced that he will eventually pass him, and he just doesn't know when that'll be. I liked how that just
Yeah, I
synced
was
up right
watching
there.
it.
Um, but right, everyone really reacts to Goku winning, and Goku's conquering, let's say, of the heroic but non-adventurous spirit.
It's like being good, but also ultimately not being able to continually integrate new information and to adjust your aim.
Right.
Don't become too stratified.
Yes, exactly. And so, but you know, Nom's a good sport about it. Shakes hands with him. Krillin's ecstatic.
I love that part where it shows him and he looks so ominous and he steps forward and it's like, oh no,
Yeah,
he's just Namu.
he's a good old Namu. So everyone's amazed, and then we kind of get to see the last couple of bits of the episode are really what the aftermath of the heroic spirit uh being defeated is, and how he'll interact. So we see the last round is set to be Goku versus Jackie Chun, Kun Chan,
Chanchun.
Chan Chun himself. And you know, they start, oh, this is where they start talking about how Master Roshi is Jackie Chun.
Right. Now I wanted to mention that there's a couple of mentions of the Buddha in this episode, right? So Namu, whenever he does his divine strike, he says, I take refuge in the Buddha of infinite light and eternal life.
Oh yes.
And so I like, there's a lot of Eastern mysticism here in Dragon Ball. And we didn't even get into it whenever we talked about, for instance, like the palace in the desert before, because it's a process figuring out what motifs are really going on here. But this Buddhism, this sort of the spirit of Buddhism, the awakening, right? Um, he he wants to be as awakened as he can, right? And a lot of how we see that happen in Buddhism is through self-sacrifice and knowing sort of that divine spirit of the Father, right? The Buddha is the enlightened one, but he's also like a father figure. And so I love this connection as he is told by Roshi who he is, because it's almost like him meeting the Buddha, right? He's meeting the spiritual father.
Yes, exactly. And but not only that, the encounter with the spiritual father and the chaos has shown him his faults,
Hmm.
right? And what are his faults? His inability to perceive other avenues besides the hierarchies he knows,
Right.
which is
Which
exactly
was his
what he
downfall.
does. Well, not only his downfall in the match, but it's his
Hmm.
downfall of his quest, because he doesn't realize, he doesn't perceive that here water is free.
That he could just hit a
It
well.
mirrors each other.
Hmm.
And if you don't think Dragon Ball's complicated, I don't know.
So this is how the theme comes together: is that he is
Right.
acting purely good, but misses the mark, right? And
Yes.
his attack, his cross, as by his own
But
description, doesn't hit the mark,
he
right?
misses the mark because he's unable to adjust to new hierarchies in real time.
Which is what Goku does, and why his tail is a signifier of that.
Right. We kind of already covered
But
that,
yeah, it's
like
nice to tie a little bow up
he's a
there on
super
it,
order, right?
because
And so yeah, that's exactly what happens, and it's true. Seeing Roshi there with like covered in flames and stuff, it's really
it's a
really
great
cool.
moment. It's so cool. I was just
And
grinning as I
it's a
watched it.
great redemption too with Namu. Like it takes a defeated character, and his encounter with the chaos was still truthful enough for him to get the the treasure of the dragon, let's say, and bring it back and share it with the people uh in his
Yeah.
home.
Well, the spiritual father steps in and says that you earned your gold, right? You got it. You didn't have to win the hierarchy of all hierarchies to take care of, the people you love. But by
Right.
doing so, you did earn it.
But you're not the best under the heavens.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And
And you
so,
don't need to be the best under the heavens to support your society, right? Your culture.
and you also, yeah. Sorry, I got off track there. I started thinking ahead. I don't want to get
It's
too
so
ahead of
easy to do
myself.
that.
Yeah, I know. So, right, and the last thing that really happens here is Namu like says out loud, like, "Oh, you're actually Master Roshi for real, right?"
And he's like,
Right, and Master Roshi doesn't want them to know, and it's clear that because Master Roshi is the spiritual father who follows the path, the way, it's clear that his weakest part, and even at this point in the story, his weakest part is his deceit. His deceit is poor for a reason. Like it looks like Master Roshi because Master Roshi embodies the spirit of truth, of ancestral truth, traditional truth.
yeah, he
And
has to
so
be in plain
he
sight, right?
can't exactly, it has to be in plain sight, and he can't do deceit very well, and so he needs something to help him cover it up, and that's how what we'll get to in the next
Well,
little
also, I
set
do
of
want to
clips.
point
Oh,
out that Roshi asks him for a favor,
not
which
yet.
is
That's in the next one, yeah, that's
okay.
where we're getting. So here we
Ah,
go.
yeah, here we go.
So
So yeah, he
go ahead, yeah.
so he has him do a favor for him, which is essentially pretend to be Roshi in order to once again, because he knows he's going to have
But
to
hold on,
defeat
let's
them
not get
again,
ahead of
right?
ourselves because there's like 3 things that happen in this set of clips.
Okay.
So the first set is that, Roshi tells Namu about the water,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then he also tells him why he entered the tournament, which is very important.
True. He does explain to him
Well,
that part.
it matters in order, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think. So after, and this is the thing, after the spiritual father and the individual, the hero's interaction with the spiritual father, finding out, um, having flaws pointed out to the hero that then can be worked on and reciprocated. The next thing is the wisdom, right? From saying Goku and Krillin need to learn that this isn't the last hierarchy. There will never be an end to these hierarchies.
Exactly. The process of integrating the ascent of the hierarchy is
There's
the mode
no
of
upper
being.
limit. We don't know the upper limit. There's no upper limit as far as we can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And Roshi doesn't want them to think otherwise, which clearly why, right? And so that's why he enters the match. And then he asks him to
Impersonate him,
right.
which is it's sort of saying, "Hey, this is this is a description of the of Roshi's mode of being, so that you can understand who I am and what
Well,
I'm doing, and now go pretend to be me." Right.
it's also interesting to see the similarities between Roshi and Namu because there Namu is that hyper order, right? In that hyper tradition, let's say putting the community first, things like that, right? He could one day possibly be like Master Roshi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another good reason of why he dresses up as him.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a case of the self discipline that really sets Roshi aside from other people, and that self discipline is one of the first things that he teaches the boys too, right? With the turtle shell. And so Namu is trying the best he can to embody that. That's kind of why I was like, it's almost like him getting to meet the Buddha, right?
Yeah, it definitely is him meeting a Buddha esque figure. Maybe not the Buddha, but yeah.
And ironically, tells him to put on sunglasses to appear as himself. And the whole point is that he met someone who's enlightened.
Exactly. Take my image. This is what you should strive. And that's the
Hmm.
last thing he leaves him with. Like, and that's why I love the 3 things that happens here. He shows them his flaws, points out his flaws, tells them the mode of being he's adopted,
Hmm.
which is to continue to push his pupils, let's say, in the hierarchies, and then he pushes Namu as if he was a pupil into a hierarchy that he belongs in by
Right.
having him adopt the image of the spiritual father.
To help him continue to do that, and also to
And
send
that's
him
the
to
redemption of Namu.
confront his own hierarchies.
And that's how they redeem Namu.
I think it's great, and it also contextualizes his fight with Goku for him. It's suddenly like, oh, I didn't just get defeated by a child; I got defeated by a pupil of, you know, the the shining center that I aim for.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing to be what do I want to say? I was gonna use the moon and the stars analogy, like when you aim for the moon, you'll land among the stars or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of true. When you're aiming at something divine, right, you'll end up near divinity no matter what. And that's kind of what Namu's done here, right? Even though his mode of being was flawed, he's adopted that mode of being and now has redeemed his flaws. This is a whole story. This whole episode is just Namu's redemption. It's great.
Yeah, again, this is another instance of like Goku is a mirror for characters. He exists to show how they can be like
Not
him.
just that, because Goku, and I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm
I'm not saying solely.
right. I'm saying he also climbs this hierarchy. Like
Hmm.
he hasn't gone up against a heroic self-sacrificial spirit yet.
Right. And that's something that he needs to integrate, right? It's and I think we said this in the first season. We were talking about how it's fast forwarding through sort of integrating important information. And it's almost like Goku is not old enough to be somebody who could take on the weight of everything that Namu takes on. But we can fast forward through that by physically making him take on the weight of that and improve his character. Just
Yeah,
to
it's
like
a
let's just get through it.
physical manifestation,
Hmm.
extrapolation of the idea, which is how storytelling in this medium ought to be done, in my opinion. But anyways, so that's all done. Those three big points get hit, and then the last thing we see in this episode is kind of the lead up to the next one. Oh, we do see, before I switch, we do see Yamcha try to confront Master Roshi and say that he is not Jackie Chun, let's say.
Yep.
And this is why he got Namu to do this. And Yamcha, of course, is not perceptive enough to realize that Namu is not Master Roshi.
Yeah, I think that if Roshi tried this on Goku or Krillin, they might see through it
Yeah,
because he might look
definitely.
too tan even from the distance, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, Yamcha was so convinced, let's say.
This was really so he could get Yamcha off his tail because Yamcha was keeping the other two on his tail.
Just a little Mara. Chris Summers said that.
I don't know.
Me neither. But let's go ahead and message retracted. All right, so let's continue. Last thing we see is kind of the preview for the next episode. What's going to happen? Goku is going to fight Master Roshi, and it's going to be a clash of titans, let's say, because it is the spiritual father against the Logos, and who knows?
Moral vaccination, yes.
I see it. Yeah,
Hmm.
go ahead.
No, I'm
Oh,
just agreeing. Yeah, that's
mm-hmm.
I like that.
Explain it.
No, just the understanding of this mode of being and sort of also sending Namu on his way with like, hey, here's a mode of being
Oh,
to embody. It's like a moral
I
vaccination
see.
sending him
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't even think about it like that, but
against,
yeah,
yeah.
no, definitely Chris Sombra. So yeah, it's a little dose of it, and actually, that's a good way to put it because we'll see what happens if, let's say, certain characters encounter modes of being that are too much for them to absorb.
Hmm.
Sorry, I got a cough. It's like dry in here.
Yeah, that's that. I think that's most of what we see in the episode. Do we have any more before we get to the end of it? Because I think it ends with them
This is
squaring
the
off with
end.
each other.
This is the end. Yeah.
And I think just Roshi comments to himself that he's a little bit nervous. He's thinking to himself, is it possible that he could even beat me?
Well, I also like there. You see a dragon behind Jackie Chun,
Hmm.
and it's he is kind of embodying the dragon for Goku to overcome, right?
But he's also sort of confronting the dragon because he doesn't know Goku's potential.
Definitely. It's clouded throughout the whole match, let's say.
Hmm.
And also they kind of resolve this here. Roshi isn't in there. And it's actually very funny that Krillin continually says that it's not Master Roshi because we already established that he recognizes the spirit is the same, even though the individual's not.
Hmm.
But he's always the one that's like, no, it's not Master Roshi.
It's great.
Yeah, I know. Uh, I'm excited because I get to fight against that strong old man, is what Goku says, and he's excited too. And I think that's pretty much where we will leave off, and we'll see the squaring off of the Muten Roshi and our boy Goku.
Later this week.
Yes, later this week on Thursday. So if you liked what you heard, give us a like. If you like the new format, give us a like.
Yeah, if you've got feedback for the format, please leave it below.
We do realize we need to have these buttons work, but we'll get all to that once we do. But we do hope you liked what you saw, and I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
That's about all.